The Jake Paul Professional Boxing Tour continued on Friday in Orlando as the former Disney star and social media sensation turned pugilist got back on track against a real boxer, scoring a first-round knockout. Jake Paul improves to 8-1 on this night. His opponent, 35-year-old journeyman Andre August of Houston, Texas. This was an 8-round cruiserweight bout, headlining, of course, Jake Paul's Most Valuable Promotions Prospect Series. But look, Jake Paul's career up to this point in boxing has largely been about pay-per-view blockbusters and well-matched fights against the type of opponents that are more on his level. In that case, it was retired UFC stars and people from different backgrounds, whether that be music, social media, or even the NBA and ex-opponent Nate Robinson. But the only loss in Jake Paul's career did come earlier this year to Tommy Fury, the brother of Tyson Fury, a quote-unquote legitimate boxer. And what the results showed on Friday with just 8 punches landed by Paul in less than 2 minutes, but the one that mattered most, a beautiful right uppercut depositing Andre August to the canvas, Jake Paul waving goodbye to his opponent as the referee administered the count. It was an impressive knockout, and even though August is unknown and really did not live up to any level of expectations with his performance, it's about the larger narrative for Jake Paul, who's really trying to author, in his own words, the greatest sports story of all time. It's already been an interesting crossover proposition to see an entertainer like Jake Paul take the sport of boxing so serious and become almost an overnight pay-per-view star. Friday's fight, as I mentioned, back on regular television, on streaming, so to speak, but it was more about Jake building toward the new goal. Yes, we know he plans on making his pro MMA debut to close next year, 2024, in a contract he's already signed with the PFL. But when it comes to boxing, you often hear Jake Paul talk about his dreams, becoming a legitimate world champion, one day luring Mexican icon Canelo Alvarez to the ring. Under that way of looking at it, this was very much a positive step forward. Certainly, there's got to be some level of criticism for the hand-picked opponent and the largely unflattering performance from August. But if you really look at the fine print here, Jake Paul, in just his 9th pro fight, was taking on an opponent who had more victories, more knockouts, and significantly more boxing experience than him. And Andre August is the type of opponent you'll typically see a prospect of Jake Paul's experience going against. Obviously, the difference is that Jake Paul is not your average prospect. He's already an established pay-per-view brand, and he's really been set out on disrupting the core of boxing, traditional boxing. But this fight and the theme it looks at Jake's going for in 2024 is to not just disrupt, but go legitimate, aim and get closer to that world title. In that regard, this was a step forward, and it was positive in this cruiserweight victory. Jake Paul is interesting. The defense is coming along. The jab is there. And as you saw with that one right uppercut he uncorked, the power has always been real. How can he do if he keeps getting this level of experience? Well, in the post-fight interview, Jake Paul did tell Ariel Helwani he plans on continuing seeking out boxing prospects of this ilk. It helps that he's also a promoter of a prospect boxing series on DAZN where he can insert himself into the main event and continue this. But can Jake Paul continue at age 26 to gain the experience, add the tools that could one day put him in the position he hopes to be, fighting for a world title? Certainly his name will help him get there, as it's probably no question you'll see sanctioning bodies in boxing throw themselves at the idea of ranking Jake Paul and eventually putting him in line. But again, the questionable nature of the opponent notwithstanding, this was the kind of performance you would hope to expect when the bright lights are on for a prospect like Jake Paul. And did he deliver? Absolutely, in this regard. The poise that he showed, the spectacular nature of entertainment, brother Logan Paul and WWE star in his corner along with him. Andre August, though, it's tough to really say anything positive about this performance. He did not live up to any level of expectations in the build to the fight, had very little words at the press conference for Jake Paul, positive or negative. And if you heard on the broadcast, Ariel Helwani, the sideline reporter, mentioning that he attempted to go into the locker room beforehand to get an interview with Andre August, the team and August declined. Ariel described it as a almost funeral setting. Obviously shows you that a hand-picked journeyman was the choice for a reason in this case. And even though August had a somewhat glossy 10-1-1 record, he did have 4 years of inactivity, which he snapped this summer when he came back and scored a victory in August. And his first 10 wins did come largely against fighters making their pro debut or with losing records, including a draw against a 3-3 fighter and a knockout loss against a fighter who has a much worse pro record at this point. August played the role of Patsy in a way, but for Jake Paul, he's going to have to be active and he's going to have to continue to escalate his competition and move up and continue to try to face better fighters. When we did see him, like I mentioned earlier this year against Tommy Fury, he did struggle. He struggled behind the big jab of Fury, struggled against the physicality, did score a knockout and carried his power late in the 8th and final round against Fury en route to losing that split decision. But Jake Paul's going to have to continue to put his nose to the grindstone to improve and maybe halt to some degree the plans he has for MMA. He wants to put in a full year of preparation. How will he do that in juggling a boxing career? We've also seen Jake Paul in the past few weeks throw out the idea of taking a year or two trying to make a run at the NFL as a slot receiver. As crazy as that sounds, it might be even crazier to imagine Jake exactly where he is now, right? A proven boxing pay-per-view brand and someone who's trying to go legit and trying to go the traditional route. Either way, all you heard all week was Jake saying, enough of these decisions. It's time I sit down on my power. I want that first round knockout. Well, 8 punches later, he delivered that. He didn't want to throw out any names of potential opponents, as I mentioned, wanting to stay in the prospect route. But Jake Paul remains an interesting proposition for the sport of boxing, a promoter slash fighter, someone who brings in huge eyeballs and attention. Still some quirks in his game, though, that will need to be fixed along the way. As we've always said from the beginning, the things that Jake Paul has going in his favor. One, he's crazy enough to try this. He's young and athletic. He has the right team around him of real boxing minds and boxing strength trainers to put him in position. He looked the part on Friday, and he delivered. Let's see how much farther the Jake Paul experience can go from here. It was KO1 on this Friday night. Jake Paul against Andre August in their 8-round cruiserweight matchup. Can the problem child continue to deliver? We have to wait and see in 2024. Of course, my name is Brian Campbell. You can catch myself and Luke Thomas every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Morning Combat, youtube.com/Morning Combat. It's the problem child, the winner, KO1. See you next time.